These sessions are now recorded. Welcome to 2026 third series of the EDI webinars. Thank you so much for joining us. I can see a couple of names that I know that are quite familiar, and I hope everyone's surviving. What are you doing just to cool off? Now, for me so far, I've had Snickers ice cream in the morning, then Snickers again for lunch, and you can't really eat much. Feel free to come off mute or to type in chat. I'm supposed to have aircon at home. I'm so jealous. I'm never jealous of anyone, but I'm jealous of you at this point. Okay, never too hot in central Scotland, but I've had some incredible thunderstorms. Oh wow. We had one at 7 a.m. this morning. It woke me up. It was my alarm. It doubles as a heater, fab. I definitely need that. And aircon at work, best place to be. Yeah, in this heat, I feel like houses, you just heat it up even more. Wow, 3 a.m. this morning. It's like a vacuum effect at the moment. We thought it'd cool down the thunder and the rain, it never. It just made it even more hot and more humid. Okay. Right, I have got, as always, a little bit of housekeeping right at the beginning. Last year, these sessions weren't recorded. This time they will be, just so that we can get them out wider. So welcome. Let me just move the chat out of the way. Again, and thank you for joining us. Okay. I'm Ipsa Shakur, your host. I'm the EDI Associate for the CDI and the author of Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Career Development, which came out last year in October. Today's session is about supporting LGBTQ plus clients and looking after yourself in the process. Okay, so this is a reflective space for the career development professionals, and we're going to explore LGBTQ plus inclusion in careers practice, look at identity assumptions, like your personal assumptions and maybe bias that we've all got, and language, practitioner well-being, and then take away some actions, well, hopefully by the end of it. So my advice is either keep your notes open or just have a pen and paper by your side, because I'm going to get you reflecting, hopefully. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping. This is recorded further learning, as I've mentioned. Please be curious, listen respectfully, challenge ideas and not people, respect confidentiality. So if you're giving us an example of a situation, just please ensure no names are mentioned or no workplaces or identities. And I want you to reflect and reflect on your own practice. Okay, this webinar forms part of the CDI CPD program. By attending, you can reflect on your professional practice, strengthen your understanding of EDI, apply evidence-informed practice, and record learning as part of your personal CPD portfolio. So just a quick mention while we're here. The next webinar is on the 31st of July. It's usually on the last Friday of each month at 4 p.m. And that's on disability and careers. Then the next one after that is Friday, 28th of August, which will be almost the end of the summer holidays. And that's about South Asian Heritage Month. So it's about roots, and rights. And it's about culture, and particularly the South Asian culture. Then on 25th of September, again at 4 till 5 p.m., we've got Inclusion Send and AI Ethics. So that'll be a really interesting one. Okay, affirming career guidance. So before we continue, I'm just going to stop sharing and ask you if you know what this means. So does anyone know what affirming career guidance is? You please come off mute and talk back to me. It'd be lovely to hear you. Okay, that's fine. An affirming conversation creates a space where people feel safe, respected, and able to be themselves. I always talk about culture, that culture of inclusion, and what you can do to make sure that everyone in the room feels like they've got a space and a seat at the table and they feel like they're able to speak. So we lead with curiosity and not assumptions. Number one, as we know, career guidance is meant to be completely impartial, but everyone comes with their own biases, assumptions, and thoughts. So just try and take these assumptions away and go in with with a completely clear mind and listen to your clients. Use inclusive language. Ensure that language you use is inclusive and ask clients what the pronouns are, how they would prefer to be called. Respect names, pronouns, and identity. Listen without judgment. Focus on their aspirations, their goals, where they want to go, and challenge our own biases, something that I constantly find myself having to do, to reflect and think, okay, that's that situation. What did I think before I actually went in? What have I now learnt? And what's that new updated learning? It's almost like updating your internal module or handbook. And then empower informed career decisions. So the key message here is equality is treating absolutely everyone the same. I never use the term equality. I always call it equity, which is giving people what they need to not just survive, but also thrive. So after your sessions, a key question that you can ask is, does your client feel heard, respected, and empowered? If you can say yes to all three of them, then that most likely is a affirming career guidance session. The Teddy framework. Now, this is mentioned in my book quite often. So this is not going beyond EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion. This is about transformative equity, diversity, and inclusion. So transformative stands for, the T stands for transformative. It's about creating lasting change, not surface level fixes. So going beyond the top level and digging deep and seeing what the root causes are, and then fixing that, and then working way up and building those solid foundations of equity, diversity, and inclusion. Then when you make things equitable, it's about looking at the system as a whole, not just a one-off scenario or one case thing, but seeing what can you do, what are the underlying issues. So 3 questions that have guided everything that we've done at the EDI, the CDI. What are the barriers? What are the enablers? So the things that are working at this moment in time, and what can we do to overcome the barriers? And when you look at things in that way, you begin finding solutions to issues, and you can look at things as a whole system and not just silos. And diversity reflecting the full spectrum of human difference experience, and I is for inclusion. Making sure that people are active participants, not just present. So when I'm here asking you to please come off mute if you want to, or type in the chat, it's because I don't want to be the one speaking alone here. I want to hear your thoughts because they can guide my learning. And I'm always looking forward to hearing what you say, because then that makes me think of things in different ways. And I love that. I love all these diverse perspectives. Okay, today's journey, we're going to explore why LGBTQ plus inclusion matters in career development, what affirming guidance looks like, creating psychologically safe spaces, challenging assumptions and unconscious bias, looking after ourselves as practitioners, and practical actions for tomorrow or your next session. I think I put them in the wrong order when I was moving the slides. Okay, anyway, so number 2, creating psychologically safe spaces for LGBTQ plus clients. This is where you can create a culture which feels safe to people, where they feel like they can talk, they can be open. What are you doing to make sure that your clients are walking in feeling like this is a safe space? I'm able to speak about what my issues are, what my fears are, what my expectations are, what I want to overcome, what are the barriers to getting to where I need to go, what are the enablers, the things that are helping me at this moment in time, and what can the careers practitioner do for me in terms of my next step and my next goal and getting to that next goalpost. So this means, as always, don't make assumptions. I know it's said that it's impartial, but like I always mention, absolutely everyone has bias, and they often have preconceived ideas, whether that's from media, from culture, from speaking to other people, a conversation, or even the non-engagement and not speaking to people within a certain community. Respect names and pronouns, again, like I said, listen with curiosity and empathy. Don't assume, just listen, ask open-ended questions and listen for the sake of listening. Explain confidentiality clearly. Focus on the person, not just their label, because being part of certain groups, whatever group you're in, actually, any group this applies to, in fact, that's not a whole person. That's a label and that's a part of who a person is, but it's not their entire existence. It's not their entire identity. And recognize barriers without defining people by them. So, an example of this could be where you say a child with autism versus an autistic child. Do you see the difference there? And empower informed career decisions. So, I'm going to stop sharing and come back to the chat because I want to hear some of you talk. Okay, so pop in the chat what your thoughts are so far. What do you think? Is this anything? I don't think it's anything really new. It's just to hone in on the skill sets that you've already got.
It does feel familiar, but it's nice to go over it all again, especially as like my colleagues aren't trained careers advisors. So whilst yes, these are the views they hold, it's nice to go through it all with CPD with other careers advisors.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. Helen.
Hi, it's I didn't want to write in the chat because it might take me too long. So I also think it's before they've even arrived as well. So I try to have cues in my working area that shows people that I'm an ally and that they're safe with me. So like even something like simple as wearing like rainbow laces in my trainers. I have fidget toys that have rainbow, colourful, and also some where I'm based. I have some posters up around the wall as well, hoping that before they've even, as they're sort of stepping in, that they feel comfortable as well.
Excellent. So by doing that and by having these posters and visible signs in front of people and clients, that does definitely show that you're an ally and you're there to support people. And it could help people to feel like they can open up and create that culture of inclusion. So I like that. If anyone else has got any golden tips and nuggets, please do share. Okay, Joseph has put in the chat, I like the idea of not being completely defined by, yeah, okay, yeah, absolutely. So a child with ASD, a child with ASD, not an ASD child. So I remember when I was years ago, I was doing a homeopathic course, and I said to the tutor that was teaching us, I've got asthma. And he looked at me, he said, what do you mean you've got asthma? I'm asthmatic. And he said, no, you're not asthmatic. You've got symptoms of shortness of breath, and these are all symptoms. The label is just a name that someone's put together and decided this is what we call everyone under a certain label. And that made me really think twice. And actually, I thought, yeah, you're spot on because asthma can come in so many different forms. It can be mild, it can be moderate, it can be quite severe, it can be life-threatening, and so on. And each case is quite different, it's individualized. So it's best not to put people into boxes and labels and see people for individuals, and also not to put people on pedestals where they have to be a representative of an entire community. I always say, I'm one person. I might belong to certain communities or certain demographics or certain groups. Doesn't mean that I'm able to speak for those groups. I can only speak for myself. Stephanie.
Yeah, so that's made me think I support young people who aren't in education, employment, or training. So obviously we get a lot of this sort of conversation about raising aspirations, and I have a real issue with that kind of terminology because the young people I support that are even in the lowest situations of their lives potentially, they have aspirations, they have dreams, they have hopes. They just don't think that that's an option because of where they are in their lives. So I don't feel like the conversations I have around raising aspirations and encouraging aspirations, it's not about that. It's about helping them see those pathways. I don't see the young people I support as neat. They aren't neat. They are young people who aren't in education currently and need that support to move forward in whatever it is that they're working on. But yeah, a lot of the conversations that we have with charities and employment sector and all the rest of it, that it's all about, well, they don't have aspirations, they don't want to get a job, they don't want to do this, they don't want to. Well, actually, no, they do. They just don't have a pathway, they don't have an option, they don't have somebody giving them a chance because we're so focused on they are this thing, this label, and it's not looking at that individual. And that's a lot of what I do on a day-to-day basis, is fighting for those individuals.
Absolutely. If you put people in cages, if you put people in boxes, this where is the limit? It's literally the top of the cage or the box. Whereas if you don't put people into boxes, yeah, they've got certain characteristics, they've got certain traits or demographics, but that is not a whole person. And like Stephanie said, calling people neat, using certain language that may not be enabling, it may be disabling on the other hand. Like I remember when I first heard the term raising aspirations, when I first came into careers, I was working for an organization and I'm working on a massive project in Derby with 35 schools, I think. And we used to use these terms a lot. And we had one person that came and questioned, but what if these children want to work in a corner shop? What if they want to be hairdressers? Or what if they want to follow whoever's in front of them? Why are we saying to them that's not good enough? And it really got me thinking. And the more you think about this, the more you think actually there's no set way of doing it. Pathways, I think, is a better term in terms of supporting pathways than saying I'm raising aspirations, because people want to become something, but it's circumstances, it's situations, it's nurture, it's whatever they were born. Often these are the factors that play into it. So very, very difficult to know where to draw that line, but also change that language. I think language is massive. That's why I talk about equality, which is giving everyone the same thing, versus equity, which is giving people what they actually need to survive and to thrive, not just survive, moving beyond surviving. So yeah, thank you so much for that, everyone. Joseph, thank you. Stephanie, Helen, thank you for that. Okay, moving on. Okay, so a couple of questions here. Would every client of yours leave feeling seen? So respected and safe. Being seen as in not physically being seen, yeah, come in next, not that, but as in I deserve to be here. I've got a seat and I feel heard, I feel validated, I feel safe, and I feel like I've been heard. And what assumptions might you be making without even realizing it? I'm working for an organization, well, I was working for an organization in the past, and I remember when they were hiring people at minimum wage, and there were a lot of issues within the workforce. And one of the things that they were saying was minimum wage people, minimum wage issues. And I thought that's really not fair, because you're literally putting people into a negative stereotype and then you're looking at them through the angle rather than individual people. So I wasn't for that at all. So what small changes could you make to make your practice feel more welcoming and inclusive? So far, Helen's mentioned posters, rainbow laces, maybe a little rainbow badge. And even if you don't want to wear a rainbow yourself, you could have posters on the wall, or you could just put things like testimonials about people feeling safe. There's so many things that can be done to make it feel like a safe space. Offer them a coffee, sit down with them, but it depends on the age of your clients, doesn't it? But offer them a drink, sit down if you can, if you've got a longer session in particular. I know often you're quite short on time, but it just depends on what sector you're working in. What can you do to make it feel welcoming and inclusive? I often say, put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're having a meeting with. What are they seeing? So it goes back to research and epistemology. What is their worldview? Where are they coming from? What is the place that they've come from? What is the culture that they've come from? What is their background? And what is the vision that they're seeing the world with? And how does all of that interpret what you're saying? Because it's often lots of different versions of the truth. There's your truth, there's my truth, there's the other person's truth, but who actually says that, who's valid? Because everyone sees things in different ways. So what you need to ensure is that your client goes out feeling heard, respected, seen, and safe. Okay, diversity, understanding identity and lived experience. Identity is more than just the characteristics that define us. Each person brings in their own experiences, values and beliefs, culture and faith, what I've just been mentioning, family influences, community, aspirations, challenges, and strengths. So, how might a client's identity shape the career choices that they feel able to make? So this is something for you to reflect on. When I was working on that project that I mentioned, we had a school with a large intake of pupils from the Sikh faith. And when I was speaking to the school told us a lot of the parents expect their children to become doctors. And so I questioned this. I said, is it actually a stereotype or is it something that you know and you've heard? Have you got the parents in to ask them what is it they want their children to do? Have you actually spoken to them? And the answer was no. So I said, then how do you know that this is the case? Because you can't put everyone into one box and expect them all to be the same. Because each family have their own aspirations. Yet a community might value certain careers more than others, but you've got to look at each person as an individual and not by the labels that they tick. So lead with curiosity, not assumptions. Affirming guidance starts by asking and not assuming. Instead of assuming, please make sure you ask open questions. Let clients define themselves and let them tell you what their name is, what the pronoun is, and how they'd like to be referred to as. Respect their names and pronouns. Avoid any stereotypes. So just going over what we said before, but also be comfortable saying, "Can you tell me more?" If you're unsure, ask that question because often people love talking about themselves. It's like I'm doing this webinar and I'll tell you stories and little anecdotes of the past and what I've seen. As human beings, we are sociable creatures and we love talking. So be comfortable saying, "Can you tell me more? I'd love to hear more." And just ask these questions just to find out who they are rather than you putting them into the box thinking, okay, that's it. Let them tell you and then together fill in those gaps. And question yourself, what assumptions do you sometimes make without realizing? Okay, recognizing and challenging unconscious bias. Everyone has unconscious bias. I've been saying this since the beginning of this webinar, but I'll continue saying it. No matter how much we say we do not have bias, absolutely everyone does. And this is informed by your background, your community, the media, what you see on TikTok, for example. Absolutely everything is political. I know I've come back to telling little anecdotes, but I was at a course a couple of weeks ago. It was about skincare, completely different, unrelated to what we're doing here. And it's about beauty skincare and products that you can put in your face to make your skin better. And the practitioner who was leading it as a teacher was talking about migrants. I've not got an issue with anyone but migrants. And I thought, what's that got to do with beauty? She said it a couple of times. I don't want to call her out because my advice to everyone is always call people in rather than out. But she continued, oh, they're killing us, they're taking our jobs. We need to look after our own people on doorstep. And got really uncomfortable because I was the only person of colour in that room. So I said to her, what makes you think that? She goes, oh, have you not been watching the news? And I said, no, I don't watch the news. I keep up to date with what's happening, but I don't watch the news. And then she said to me, well, have you not seen what happened in Belfast? All these migrants are coming in, taking over. And I just stopped her there. I said, you really need to challenge your thinking. I said, it sounds like what you're saying is influenced by media, perhaps, or whatever you've seen. And because you really need to widen it because if you think about it, what we've got taught in university was often the people that are coming over are the ones that are doctors, engineers, the ones that are had money wherever they came from, and they ended up here because of unfortunate circumstances such as war, genocide, and so on. And what we need to do is not have these assumptions and put them all in one boat. Yeah, there's bad in every community, but we can't just believe what the media is saying and go blindly and follow it because we can't blame them for taking our jobs, they haven't got jobs themselves. And so you really have to think about where you're coming from with this. And it was a bit of an awkward silence, but I just could not stay quiet at that point. And I don't know if that was the right thing to do. I did speak to her after. And I said, look, it wasn't about me calling anyone out, but it just became really uncomfortable. And the other people were saying, I don't do politics. I don't talk about politics. And I said, but absolutely everything is political. The ads that you see on your phone, the whatever we see in front of us, every single thing is political. How much you pay for gas, how much you pay for your car, the VAT that we pay. Absolutely everything links back to politics, and this is something that often people don't realize. Okay, so creating safe and inclusive guidance spaces. Clients are more likely to engage when they feel welcome, respected, listened to, safe, valued, and free to be themselves, and not like a version of themselves like a cover or mask. You want people to be their authentic selves and feel comfortable, and that can take a bit of time. it can take time for people to kind of slip off the outdoor mask and feel comfortable telling you who they really are, where they want to go in life, what their background is, what the family circumstances are. These are all very, very personal things. So if you think about it, you're in a privileged position where you get to hear what people want to do with their lives. And it's not easy opening up. So you must make sure that you're asking the right sort of questions, you're listening, and you're actively listening by making sure that your clients know that you're fully immersed in what they're saying and that whatever they tell you is confidential as well. So psychological safety allows honest conversations about identity, aspirations, and career goals. So a quick little reflection question here. As your clients are leaving, can you 100% say that every client leaves this guidance session feeling like they belonged? Because if I go back to that course and that day, I didn't feel like I belonged, even though I'm not a migrant in that way. I'm third generation here, and yeah, it felt really exclusive and not inclusive. And went home feeling quite upset, thinking I've paid a lot of money for a course about skincare. That's not what I went into here. So that was a bit of feedback that I wanted to share, but only once I'd finished the course. What would you have done in that situation? I'm just going to stop sharing. Any advice, any tips, anything in the chat?
Yes, I'm really appalled that that happened to you, especially with a trainer who is holding a room full of people. Um, I, I guess my questions are starting to go more into something that might be not be covered in this around how do I be an ally in those sorts of situations. So whether that be to do with LGBTQ plus or other topics. So I definitely feel like I'm very welcoming, and I just put in the chat, if someone tells me something like about their sexual orientation or being trans, anything like this, a disability that I don't know about, I always give them really good eye contact and say thank you for letting me know, and I might follow that up to make sure they're really seen and heard. But my thoughts about your experiences are reminding me of times when I try to speak out and stand up for what's right, but I don't know how the people around me, who perhaps it is targeting more, feel about that. So would you have appreciated someone
Yeah,
to
to play devil's
stand up?
advocate, there was a police officer in the room, there was a nurse, there was so everyone came from like some sort of background where they should be well aware of EDI and all these sorts of things. And the fact that they went quiet, it was, yeah,
Yeah.
I felt like the only person, I felt really small after. But I just felt like I had to say it and just be like, no, actually, what you're saying is completely incorrect. And it's not relevant to what we're studying at this point. Like, you can't say everyone's welcome here but migrants. Is yeah, I would have appreciated someone to speak up. And if you were there and you spoke up for me, I'd have been like, you know what, I actually feel welcome. Like I feel like I belong here, but I didn't feel like I belonged at all at that point. Helen, I think you're on mute. I don't know if you're speaking.
No, I was no.
Yeah, so it's nice to hear that you'd be an ally. And I always think it's so important to be an ally, whether you're part of a group or not. If you see something that doesn't quite sit right with you, I'm not saying call people out, but maybe call them in and say, what makes you think that? Which is kind of what I asked her. What makes you think that? Why do you think that? Are you sure that's completely true? So I did ask questions to us, but she wasn't going to change her view, so I left it. And she said, oh, people here have got really strong opinions. And then she kind of let it go. Okay, just continuing going back to what we were speaking about. Okay, protect your well-being and professional boundaries. So looking after ourselves, this EDI work is hard work. It is emotionally heavy, it is physically heavy, and it's quite taxing. So you need to look after yourself and protect your well-being by setting healthy boundaries. Now, upon reflection, I gave you that example for you to begin thinking, what would you do in that situation? it's important to know what your boundaries are and are you able to speak up? Some people like myself are well versed in EDI and they can speak up and be an ally to other groups, whether they're part of that group or not. Like if someone says anything bad about any community, I'd be the first person to kind of question and be like, but what makes you think that? Why? What informs your thinking? Why do you think that? And have you actually met people from that community? Because I feel like if you don't question it, you're sat there. Silence is also compliance sometimes, but this comes with a caveat only if you feel safe yourself to talk about things. Because if you don't feel equipped and safe to come yourself to speak about things, it's really heavy. So I wouldn't ask, I would never ever advise anyone to call anything out. I'd say call people in, maybe have a word afterwards and speak to the person and say, but what made you think that? Like I just want to understand your thinking and your logic. And that probably would have been a better way of asking. But because it was mentioned repeatedly, I just wasn't sure why she was mentioning it. So reflect regularly. Like I went home, it was from Manchester back home, and the whole way home, I drove thinking about that conversation. So I'm quite reflective. Using supervision, talk about things. It's nice to hear other people's opinions. So ask people, what do you think what would you have done in that situation? What could you have done? What could have gone better? Use people's experience. And if you're ever unsure, please do message me on LinkedIn or email me on edi.associate@thecdi.net and I'll get back to you if you need any advice. And share best practice with colleagues and even worst practice as well. Anything that didn't go wrong, share it with your colleagues and say what could have gone better. Reflect on what's going on. What could we have done better? Where could I have gone better? Where could I have done better? Or what were the barriers? What was working well in that situation? How do we take away those barriers? What can we do to remove them? But also looking after yourself helps you support others. I also you can't pour out of an empty cup. So if emotionally you feel like you cannot take on anymore mentally, do what you can, but don't push those boundaries too much. So think about what helps you stay effective without being overwhelmed. As I will say, EDI is heavy work, but it's not scary at all. People are often quite scared, but the fact that you're here, you've signed up to the session, you've turned up, you want to find out more, you want to support your LGBTQ plus clients, and you want to know what you can do as a practitioner to support certain demographics or all demographics, in fact, of the clients that you see, it shows that you are invested in that CPD and learning best practice. So well done to you. You can't be what you can't see. For those of you who've been here with me for a long time, I always put this quote in because this is by Marian Wright Edelman, and she's a Black American scholar, and the careers sector often uses her quote, you can't be what you can't see, but they don't attribute it to her. So I always make sure if you want to be an ally, if you want to be an EDI advocate, if you want to work in the EDI space or the career space, please show people what you can be in terms of being a safe space, creating that psychologically safe practitioner, having affirmative guidance, being reflective, and always willing to learn more. If you can show your clients that you're continuously on your journey and you're learning as much from them as they're learning of you, then it's a two-way thing. Okay, turning reflection into action. This is where you can take some notes and begin thinking about a certain scenario or situation, or what are you going to do in future. Before your next guidance session, consider one assumption that you will challenge that this session has made you think. And if you'd like to share it after I go through the slide, please do. One question that you're going to ask differently, one way to make your practice more inclusive, and one action that you will take after today's webinar, because it's these small little changes. If you do one thing after each webinar, you begin thinking, actually, I could change it that way. I could do things this way. I could have, in future, I can make things better by doing X, Y, Z. Then that's easy. Whereas if you go away and think, I'm going to change my entire practice, the way I do things, more than likely it won't be done. But if you can go away with just one action, it's more likely to get done. So What is the one thing you're going to do differently after today? So I just want to stop sharing for a second. We'll come back to the PowerPoint in a minute. And please share what you think a good action or a takeaway from this webinar is for you. Feel free to come off mute or type in the chat.
I'm going to actively seek out some local organisations that I might be able to signpost young people to. I've got like a little idea, but I'm not fully equipped with that because I don't necessarily get into the ins and outs of things. But like thinking about, I'm sure you're more sort of up to date than me. Is it Stonewall?
It is down one there,
Yeah, just
amazing.
things like that where I've not really looked into it properly. So that's what I'm going to do.
I mean, type Stonewall in the chat for anyone who wants to look at the website. Oh, we've got quite a few things in the chat. I've not seen that before. Okay, thank you for sharing that, Helen. So over here, we've got a couple of things here. So Gillian's put, I wear a rainbow lanyard, lovely. My front door has a rainbow poster. I bet it's nice and colourful. I always ask the person, confirm the name and the pronouns before we start. Excellent practice, well done. I work with school age clients. Parental influence can be challenging, particularly when the young person has a different vision to their parents. Absolutely. There's a quote I often go back to, you cannot raise your children in the same way that we were raised because they're from a different generation. So you have to see things from their point of view. In the past, I've offered to meet parents and share information the young person can share with the parent. Excellent. So you're getting the parents and the wider community involved. Helen's, but if someone tells me something personal, I will say thank you for letting me know. Really good, yeah, practice, yeah. Because it's something personal, so it's almost a privilege to hear what they want to say. And thank you, Ollie. Nick's put, I like your phrase of calling in rather than calling out. Yeah, I've talked about this quite often and in my book as well. Gillian's put, I'd like to think that I'll call things in, but if I'm being honest with myself, I'm not sure that I would in a moment. Something I need to reflect on. It's not easy at all. It is quite hard. There's just a situation that I gave to get you to think. Helen's put outside of work, I put myself in situations that push myself to help towards understanding others. Oh, excellent. I like to hear that. I recently attended a research presentation at LGBTQ plus friendly cafe about disability and queerness. Lovely. I love that. I bet you learned a lot. Joseph's put stay curious, don't assume. And Gillian's put be more curious when people talk about their careers, ideas. What is driving this? Excellent. What is the force? So if you think about that mountain, you hear and see the tip. What's beneath that tip? That's often what you've got to question. So Magali's put, I found post-16 transgender students and this awfully long waiting list to transition are the ones directly impacted on the idea itself for the future. There's a lot of things with the NHS at this moment and with healthcare that we can complain about. It is very, very difficult, especially for that group who are in between childhood and adulthood, which is difficult enough to navigate. And then there's a waiting game and it's very, very difficult. So what can we do to support those clients? Over to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And feel free to come off mute.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello. Yes, I was trying to type, but yes, that's a very good question. What do we do? I think it's hard to guide students through the fact that, yes, this is about 16 or 18 years waiting list, so we're not going to wait. We need to factor it into our considerations, and that include gender considerations as well, or non-binary considerations. But I think it's really important to have this support where we can help the students to differentiate between that waiting time. It doesn't have to be a waiting time. And also, if I'm very honest, we also sometimes look at other alternatives for those who have more means sometimes. But it's I think it's important to just acknowledge the situation. It's really, really difficult. As you say, there's a kingdom of transitions, really. So it's really difficult, but I think the support, emotional support combined with career guidance based on the fact that we've got a timeline, but we can also put some things in place and have some considerations for our future gender or anything like that. I think it's so important because, yeah, I found the students so impacted by the idea of a future. Just that. So yes,
Actually,
that's what I would do.
thank you so much for sharing that. I can imagine it must be quite daunting. And I think it's also important to acknowledge our limitations in certain situations. You can give
Yeah.
empathy. So I've just seen this in the chat as well, which I completely agree with. Display empathy and listen. Sometimes people just want to be heard. If they can be heard, then that's almost half the problem solved in a way. Like when I'm a bit upset, I just want someone to hear me, not to give me the answers because I know they're not equipped to give me the answers, but just to be heard and validated. Yeah, if so, your point is, I can see why you're feeling that way. I can understand. I can understand why you said what you said or why something happened in that way. Just to be heard, acknowledged, and validated, I think is so important and display that empathy. Not empathy, not sympathy, not I feel sorry for you, oh, that's so bad. Nothing like that. That can be patronizing. I
Yeah.
used to go to a call center and they always used to say empathy, not sympathy. So I understand where you're coming from. Yes, I can, and use words that are empathetic, but not sympathetic, because that can be quite patronizing. So be very, very clear on the difference between the two. But thank you so much for that. That was really a fantastic point. Okay, almost done. Okay, right. So, what can we do tomorrow, as in the future? Small actions make a big difference. Think about that one change. What are you going to change? What are your thinking process? What assumption are you going to take? Are you going to think about and change? What is your starting point? Where have you got to on this journey? And what can you do right now? Review your language. Think about the language you spoke about. Aspirations. We spoke about putting people in the box. We've spoken about not making people entirely representative of that entire community. We spoke about labels being a label, not defining people. We've spoken about lots of different things and assumptions as well. How can you reflect on your own assumptions? What can you do here? Can you update your resources? Where can you access them? Stonewall is excellent. At the end of this PowerPoint, there's also a list of resources that you can access. So this PowerPoint will be sent out to you. Improve accessibility, share learning with colleagues, and continue your CPD. So as mentioned at the beginning, we've got CPD every month. We'll have webinars. And I've got something exciting to announce in a second. Okay, reflection for practice. Take a minute now to consider what challenged your thinking today. Maybe write it in your notes if you're not comfortable sharing, put it in chat or come off mute. What assumptions did you notice? What will you do in a different way? And what conversation do you now feel more confident having? Okay, so I'm going to pause for a minute and give you time to reflect. Okay, would anyone like to share anything? I know it's not been a minute. Okay, Helen's put, I feel like I'm doing a lot already and recognizing that is good, but I can do more to help others in my team to understand affirming guidance and making everyone feel comfortable in one-to-one guidance and group sessions. Excellent. I'm glad that you've taken that away from this session. And well done, Helen, on all that you do. I can see that you're a true ally. Okay, continue your learning. So The book Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Career Development, published by Trotman in partnership with the CDI, is available on Amazon. A little bit more information there about all the range of books. It's not just my book. I've got lots of colleagues who've written amazing books and highly recommend each of them. Introducing Teddy Talks. So this is the exciting news that I was referring to. So this is a brand new podcast I've shared on my LinkedIn, but not given a lot of information about. So you're the first people to hear about this. And these are monthly podcasts that will be recorded with a guest. And we go in depth about their lived experience about certain topics. So the first one will be LGBTQ plus inclusion. Then we're going to go in order of the webinar that we've had for that month and link it into the podcast. Then it will be disability and neurodiversity in July, race and ethnicity, faith and belief, menopause and women's health, refugees and asylum seekers, trauma-informed careers practice, intersectionality, inclusive leadership, and that's just the beginning. And this will be available via the CDI website and YouTube. So you'll be able to access that, and it won't be a live recording. It will be a recording that's been recorded already, and you can watch it at a time that suits you. So we hope you're happy with that. Then here's a couple of websites over here that you can access to get more education, to access resources or support, and Stonewall, of course. And then some online courses for you to look at if you have the time and you'd like to build on your knowledge, because this is literally just touching the surface of it. And a massive thank you. Again, here's a link to my book. If you'd like to connect with me, please do connect on LinkedIn. Go on the CDI website, have a look at what training events we do. Mine don't cost you a penny, so please do come along. Have a look at the books that we've got and also check the book out on Amazon. Let me stop sharing. Over to you. So Gillian's book from today, a reminder that I can do better. We can all do better. I do have unconscious bias. Yep, and I need to keep challenging myself. Huge admission debate, Gillian. We've all got unconscious bias, and yeah, and so all of us do need to continue to do that. And I think that's applicable for absolutely everyone, like a blanket thing. Statement. Helen's put, that's a great announcement. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you as well for coming along and supporting me. And thank you to CDI and Ollie in particular. Magali's put, assumptions from my generation from 1975 that it is not always a struggle to be part of the LGBTQAI plus, even though I believe no right acquired is forever and the fight goes on. That's absolutely everything. Yes, love online courses. Fantastic. So this PowerPoint should be sent out to you hopefully quite soon. Thank you so much for coming. Any questions? You're very quiet. Is it because it's a Friday? Normally at lunchtime we have a lot more chatter. No? Okay. Well, thank you so much for attending today. Oh, bless. Yeah, sorry, I got all my answers. Yes, I'm glad you got your answers. Helen, have a lovely weekend, everyone, and Helen, have a night. Yeah, thank you very much for attending. Enjoy the last of the sunshine. I think it's going to cool down by Sunday if you're in the UK. And a massive thank you to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a lovely week.